Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome aboard if you're new, and welcome back to SimplePlanes 2. So for my last few videos, they've kind of just been sort of quick, basic how-tos. It's been a while since I've done anything just, where I sit down and build stuff and try and, make something, at least something interesting. But I have spent some time, obviously, as you can see here, working out how to build wheeled vehicles. And I've got my kind of, well, I'll show you here in a second. It's sort of a off-road uh, truck kind of crawler sort of thing. I've got it geared really low in the first gears so it can crawl really well. And then the higher gears are more for speed. And as you can see, I've got a little head of my speed display and a little shift light I put in there. But anyways, this episode isn't to show off my stupid little baby truck that a toddler could make. Instead, we are going to try and build a detachable trailer that we can tow behind it. So let's go ahead and just take a look at this real quick. Alright. We'll just hop out here. Alright, there it is. So, just kind of a very blocky basic truck. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on the body, obviously, because I was just learning how to make stuff, so. But, honestly, that body style kind of suits it, so. What I want to do is I want to make a trailer that'll attach with the gooseneck back here in the back of the bed, and we can use it to tow stuff. And maybe we'll make it enclosed, maybe not. I don't know, so. That's what I want to do with today's episode. So we're going to work on that. And there will obviously be some hopeful learning opportunities here because we're going to make some free swinging hitch for the trailer, as well as probably some sort of suspension for the trailer that's custom made, some sort of trailing arm suspension or something. So let's go ahead and hop into that. Here we go, we just got the builder for our truck up. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is I want to get the hitch built in the back here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our gizmos and we're going to grab a rotator and just stick it right in the back here. And we want to get it close to over the axle if we can. It'll help it support the weight a bit better. But we don't want it too far back, so we won't put it all the way back in there. There we go. And then we'll put it down in that a little bit. And that is way too right, so let's change that up for now. There we go. Alright, and then the first thing you want to do with this rotator is you want to go into the settings and you want to set the speed to 0. It'll say floppy, and that'll give it pretty much just free rotation. So now your rotator is turned into a hitch. Then we're going to grab a magnet and we're going to stick a magnet on the top of it. And we are going to use this. Let's just double check our connections here. Okay, that is connected to the top. That's where we want it. And we are going to use this to attach our trailer hitch to on our trailer. So what we want to do next is we'll go ahead and we'll set this to group 3, just so we don't forget. We'll use 3 for the trailer. Right, and then we want another one of these. So we are just going to shift right click to copy it, and we're going to flip it over upside down here. There we go. And then we're just going to line it up with this one here. So we're going to try and match the coordinates. Well, if not try, we will. There we go. And then we are just going to move it up until they're not inside each other, because what we want to do next is we'll go ahead and we'll set this to group 3, just so we don't forget. We'll use 3 for the trailer. Alright, and then we want another one of these. So we are just going to shift right click to copy it, and we're going to flip it over upside down here. There we go. And then we're just going to line it up with this one here. So we're going to try and match the coordinates. Well, not try, we will. There we go. And then we are just going to move it up until they're not inside each other, because we don't want them really inside each other. We just want them close. Because when we load in the trailers, we're not going to have the trailer attached. We're going to have it be a separate piece, so we don't want them impacting weird. Alright. And right now this is connected to the fuselage, so that'll be a problem. We're going to get rid of that, and now we're going to build off of this. So now we want to build the tongue. So let's start grabbing some fuselage to do that with. It's going to want this to be connected to something. There we go. Alright, and then we are just going to start shaping this and sizing this until we got it kind of how we want it. We'll make it a little box framey. Nope. We want to move just this part. Alright, now... Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I want this end. We'll just kind of narrow it down a little bit. Yeah, we'll do too. That'll look alright. Alright. Then we're going to add another section. Get rid of that rise. Alright, now we're going to have to build off of this to start building our trailer. Do we want this a little bit longer? Just so we can... What is up with that? Do I have... Why is there a cutout back here? That's kind of weird. Well, that's an interesting way to find it. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and just start shaping this and building this. You all know how building works by now, so I'm sure you can figure it out. So just chill. I'll put in some music in the background if I can, and we'll build out the frame of this real quick, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. Alright, now I'm just going to temporarily attach this fuselage to the truck so I can paint it. I'll go with this for now, just temporarily. Alright, anyways, back to building. Alright, there we go. We've kind of got the basics of the shape down. We'll tidy it up later, but we want to get to the interesting stuff. So we've got our hinge back here. Let's go ahead and make sure this one's... Alright, they're both set to 3. That's how we want it. Alright, now we need to get some tires on here. So the first thing we're going to want is an axle. Let's go ahead and make one of those real quick, just out of a piece of fuselage here. Then I'm just going to rotate it sideways so I can make it round. We're just going to round these off. There we go. And let's shrink it down some. That should be sufficient. For now, we can adjust it later if we need to. Nope, that's too long. Because that's the length, not the width. Duh. Alright, now let's go a bit longer. We want our wheels to stick out a bit. We want to have as much surface on top of the trailer as possible. And if I have the wheels under it, then it'll mess with the suspension. I'll have to do big cutouts. It'll get rid of the space on top. So we'll kind of do a mix of the two. We'll go with off-road wheels for this. There we go. Those are kind of small. What size do we have for these? 240, 115. The width doesn't need to be that wide. But we want the diameter to be roughly the same. We want it to be able to carry some weight. We'll put it right about here for now. And that's pretty close, but that's okay. Oh, we moved just the wheels. We don't want to do that. We want to move this. There we go. Now what you can do is you can set this up as a separate vehicle or make it as an assembly and work on the weight balance and stuff, but we won't worry about that too much for now. Let's just get these on the same plane. Oh, why you gotta be like that? There we go. That's pretty close. That's not quite how I want it. So let's adjust this a little bit. Let's go up to 1. Yeah. Match that up there. There we go. And then we'll move these down to where these wheels are centered. And that way when we load it in, everything will be... That's still pretty low. Let's make these tires a bit smaller, shall we? I mean, they are trailer tires, so we don't need them to be super big and traction-y. How about that? That looks alright. Now, though, they're not going to line up perfectly with these, so we're going to need to just get as close as we can here. Doesn't have to be perfect. That'll do. Alright, now let's work on building some suspension for this. Grab a couple coilovers here, and we're going to keep these mirrored and we're going to put them out here towards the outside. They're a little small. Let's size these up until they're about where we want them. There we go. Now, for the actual tuning for the spring strength and the damper, that's going to depend a lot on the vehicle. You're making the size of the trailer, how much the trailer weighs, what you're putting on it. So that's something you're probably going to have to mostly tune by yourself, but I'll explain how it works. Alright, so we got our coilovers centered here. Now, we don't want these attached like hard points to the axle in this, otherwise it's not going to be able to move or flex at all. So we're going to want to get rid of any connections these have. And then to make these work right, we're going to hide this. What we're going to do is we're going to go into our gizmos here, and we're going to grab a hinge rotator. There we go. And we're going to attach it to our coil over here in the orientation where it'll kind of, like this, where it's parallel with the axle. And then we're going to size these down some because we don't want them sticking through the bed. Get rid of the bases. Stop clicking on the wrong thing. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of these connections for now also. Let's flip this the other way. The size on these doesn't matter too much. We're just making them kind of small so they hide a little bit better inside here. And then you're going to want to set the speed on these all the way down to 0 so they're floppy. And then just disable the input. We're just basically making it a floppy hinge. So we'll leave it like that. Alright, and then we're also going to need a set of these for the bottom to connect it to the axle so it can hinge on that as well. So we're going to put that down here on the bottom of the piston. Oh, we don't need to do that. Alright. And then we're going to go in here and disable aircraft collisions just on these parts so they're not causing issues when they move around. Otherwise it can be a problem. Make sure these are all set. That's good. Alright, next we're going to need to set up our links. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So what we're going to do is we are going to get rid of any default ones because we're going to do this all by ourselves. So we're going to connect the top to the bottom of our shock. And that should have done both sides. And then we're going to unhide our axle because we're going to connect the bottom of these to our axle. There we go. And now we're connected up there. And then we're going to connect the bottom of these ones to the top of the shock. And then we're going to connect the top to the trailer bed. And then they're sticking up a little bit, so we're just going to move those down a little bit. There we go. Alright, and now when our springs move and our axle moves, those will be able to kind of pivot independently without messing up too much. Alright, now the next part we're going to need to do is to keep all this stable. So we are going to make a couple more beams here, or something similar. We're going to go ahead and have that mirrored, and we're going to want these lined up with the axles, or with our coilovers. Alright, and then let's go ahead and tweak these to how we want them. So we're going to... do we want these ones round? You know what? Let's go with not round this time. We'll go with a bit boxy. Let's put one. Yeah, why not? Alright, and then we are going to make these much smaller. There we go. Alright, now we are going to just rotate these a bit. We'll go 15 degrees. Now we are going to want to have these So they are connected to the center of our axle on this end, in line with our suspension. And then we are going to stretch them out until they get up here to where our trailer bed is. We don't want to go through it, we just want to go up to it. And then we are going to grab a couple more hinges. Get those oriented right. Can be a bit of a pain. Sometimes it can be useful to just hide stuff. There we go. See, we hide the bed, it's not in the way, and now we can just connect these. So let's go ahead and get these set up the same way. We want these to be floppy as well. We don't need a base. We can shrink them up some. We'll leave them a bit bigger because they'll look better down here. Get them kind of in here a bit. Just get them lined up so they look nice. And then we're just going to check that our alignment is good on those as well. And that is. Alright, now we want to do our connections. So let's go ahead and get these connected up here. We're just going to get rid of all the default connections because this game likes to be kind of weird with them sometimes. So we're going to connect the end to our axle. And then we're going to connect the other end to our hinge. And then we're going to take our hinge and connect the back of our hinge to our bed. There we go. So now these arms will keep the axle lined up while it's when it moves. And you can add more depending on what you're hauling or what you're doing. This is very, very basic. You can dress it up however you want. You can add cross-beam supports in there. But right now we're just getting kind of a basic setup here. Paint this stuff a little bit different so you can see it. We'll make those orange. Alright, there we go. Very, very basic setup. So right now we've got our magnets set to group 3, so when we turn those on it'll attach. So let's go ahead and load it up and see how it behaves. Alright, it's just sitting there because we forgot to disconnect it from the truck, which we do not want. We will get rid of that connection, and now see how it's all white? It is not a part of the truck right now, so when we load it in it should be loose, but it is. There we go. As you can see, it just flops down on its own. So let's reload here. Alright, but if we attach our magnet, we can pull it along with us. And since we've got that floppy hinge in the back, when we turn, the trailer's got a bit of turn with it. And then, let's go ahead and go back here. We'll go back into build. Didn't seem quite as floppy as I would like it. That is floppy. The magnets are good. Let's go ahead and set this magnet. Yeah, we'll leave that there for now. Alright, so next we need to figure out a way so when we unhook our trailer, it kind of stays where we want it. And to do that, we are going to use some pistons. So we're going to stick these down here. We're just going to flip them around so they extend downward, just out here on the outside corners. Alright, let's take a look at these. So the range, speed, we're going to turn the speed down maybe a little bit. And then we're going to make them so they start extended. So we're going to go into our custom input here, get rid of that. And then we are going to, I've been having a bit of an issue with pistons on the beta version. I don't know if it's just buggy, if it's just me, but they have an issue of extending too far and going out of where they need to be. So we're going to use the um, funky trees expression to control how far they can extend the min and max. So we're going to do clamp 1 minus activate 3. So that's going to make them so they start. The 1 minus activate 3 is going to make them so they start extended, and then when we press 3, they'll retract. And then we're going to put in the min and max extension. So let's start with, now we'll try 0.65. And we'll see how that works. Not quite far enough, so let's go ahead and we'll size these up a bit. We want them a bit beefier anyways. Okay, bit too beefy. That's okay, we will go down a little bit and then we'll fine tune it in the settings if we need to. Alright, that looks pretty good. But yeah, as you can see, there's stuff sticking out of the top up here from the pistons, so move that down a tad. And then we will go back into our expression here, and let's set that to, we'll do 0.68 and see. We just want it to be enough to just lift up off of it a little bit. We don't want it to lift up too much. There we go. Now, we can drive out from under it. Let's go ahead and back up here, and we'll get it lined up with our hitch in our truck. Alright, we're lined up, and then we're going to press 3. Alright, we'll need to decrease the power on those magnets a little bit maybe, but as you see, the pistons retract at the same time the magnet turns on, so now what would help is if I put a little bit of a delay in there. But yeah, see how the pistons are kind of spiking up through there? They tend to act kind of weird, so let's see. We'll slow them down a little bit more. And let's turn these down just a little bit. And we'll move this down just a tad. And this part is mostly just, kind of tweaking stuff, figuring out exactly what numbers you need. There we go. And then if we press 3, still a little bouncy, but that's because we haven't set up any of the suspension on here yet, so let's go ahead and go through here and double check all our connections just to make sure we don't have anything that's not where it's supposed to be. So we got back to fuselage. Yep. Yeah, those are fine. And then these are connected fine. Alright, now we've got our axle. Now, as you can see, our axle is connected to the fuselage, and we don't want that. That's going to keep it from moving, which is probably why it's bouncing so hard. So there we go. Now our axle is connected to just our wheels and the hinges, which are connected to the shocks, which are connected to the hinges, which are connected to... Where'd my hinge go? Shock. Hinge rotator. There we go. Shock fuselage. Alright, now let's try it. See how it... Okay, now let's take a look at our suspension, because this is something that you're going to have to tune specifically for your trailer and whatever you're planning on hauling. Let's go ahead and make sure these are set to disable aircraft collisions on these also, just so they don't cause us any problems in the future. I believe we got these ones already, didn't we? No, we didn't. Okay. There we go. What the... Why did that move over there? Weird. Yeah, let's try this again. then we have to remember to disable the inputs on the hinges also because we're making them floppy. So don't forget to do that as well. I'm just going to double check all of these. All right. And then we've got these ones up here. All right, we are good. Okay, now our trailer is very light right now, so let's put some weight on it. That's very easy to do. It's a great way to test it. Just grab some fuselage blocks, put them over your axle so it's balanced. Just gonna copy that just to make it even easier. And then you can just add dead weight to these, however much you want. So that's 1,000, so that'll be 2,200 pounds. So let's see what that does to the trailer. It's a little bouncy now. As you can see, the springs are compressed a little bit. Let's touch that. And we'll move it around and see if they... Yeah, see, as you can see, the suspension's kind of working a bit. So the two settings, so the stiffness is just obviously going to adjust how much weight they can handle, essentially how stiff your springs are. So the more weight you have on it, the stiffer you're going to want the springs. And then inversely, you're going to want to adjust your dampers, because the damper is going to be what slows down the movement and keeps it from bouncing too much. So it essentially controls how fast the springs can snap back to their original position. So let's say we turn our damper all the way down. Now see how bouncy it is? The damper's not doing any work right now, so it is just sitting on just the springs. And this is what it would be like if you were driving with just springs and no shocks. It would be... Let's go over a little bump over here. See, they just keep bouncing there. So ideally what you want to do is you want to adjust your damper to make up for the springs strength. So as you turn the damper up, it's going to slow down the response of your springs and make it a smoother ride. But anyways, hopefully this has been kind of useful and or entertaining. I thought about maybe going on and building more onto it and making it into a box truck, and that's definitely something I'm going to plan on doing, but I'll probably do that on my own because I honestly don't know if anyone really wants to see anything like that, because it's just literally going to be me building, what everyone else builds in the game. So hopefully these have been fairly interesting. You can see our suspension working there on our little trailing arms, keeping it nice and stable while it bounces over the terrain. And then if we want to drop that off, we can just disconnect it, extend our pistons, and take off. Pretty cool. I'm sure it's stuff people have done a billion times on this game, but I'm trying to kind of discover this stuff on my own. And, not have... Man, I need to weaken the magnet a bit, but that's alright. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. If you have any ideas or anything you want to see built, let me know also. I'd be happy to make more videos. I'm always looking for ideas. And until next time, take care, be safe, and I will see you later.